So good morning, everyone. My Zoom people, good morning. Can you take yourself off of you and just say hi? Jasmine, say hi right quick. Please. Or Susie, say hi right quick, please.
Hello.
This is Kelly Vogt. Oh, hi, Kelly.
So nice. What was it? Roger. Hey, nice to meet you, Roger.
Want to see my grandbaby?
Yeah.
She's gorgeous.
When was she born?
August 17th.
So cute.
Yeah, and here's the newest one.
I won't be a person. I don't do that.
Yeah.
You disappear. I'll know what you're out.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I guess we're gonna start here. We're gonna let Nicole in. Who's letting people in?
It's you.
Me?
Yeah.
All right.
So we don't.
Okay, so we have a nice small group this morning. And we have a few people on Zoom that I can see looking backwards here. We have a nice group here. So how's everyone this morning?
Good.
Very good. I'm gonna actually sit on this nice bed chair. And so today what I'm gonna just go through, so mostly what I'd like to do is crazy. How can I do this?
Want me to hold it?
Yeah, would you mind?
No.
Okay, so what I want to do, if can you on Zoom hear me? Can somebody say hello or hi or just say you can hear us?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
We can hear.
Jeff, that was quick. Jeff said yes, real quick. Okay, so as I start, what I want to do is I want to hear from all of you and the group on the screen here. So if I were to ask you your biggest challenge in your business right now, what would that be? Biggest challenge in your business right now for you? Just one thing. Biggest challenge.
The forms.
The forms.
How's the market condition?
Market.
I would agree, sellers, motivation.
Relation. Listings. What about listings?
Getting them.
Getting. Yeah.
Buyers.
Buyer uncertainty. Biggest challenge in your business right now, man.
How? Change my business?
Biggest challenge in your business. I speak too quickly sometimes.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's my fault. I'm here.
Yeah. Care of my clients, like my.
Take care of your clients. Okay, great. Who on Zoom could, right quick, one thing, your biggest challenge in your business right now? Jasmine, you get to go first.
I think meeting of the minds between buyers and sellers. Each one thinks
Okay.
it's their market right now.
Okay, so you're talking like in terms of like pricing, like some buyers.
Yes,
think-
there's a huge variance and yes.
Okay, great. Aaron, how about you? No comment? Cameron? Biggest challenge, Susie? Nicole?
I'm with Jasmine. I'm selling a home and the prices are dropping right now. And so you have the buyers that want to get a deal and you have the sellers that want to get the top dollar. So
Got it. Okay. All right, LaShawn? Good thing I have good ears, huh? Oh, he's at work just listening. Okay, we're gonna start then. Okay, so it's safe to say that here we are in 2024. Right? And a lot of the challenge, with the exception of a couple of new forms in this last month and a half, a lot of the challenges, we're going to be doing this how long?
35 years.
Long time, okay. So a lot of the challenges are repetitive. Right? So agents getting listings, doing business, a lot of the things really haven't changed because of what was the big challenge we had 2 years ago? Actually, let's go back 3 years ago, 2021. What was the big challenge in 2021? What was that?
COVID.
Well, COVID was part of that,
Uncertainty.
uncertainty, right?
Inventory.
Low inventory, right? Buyers lining up a block long to buy a house, right? But now what we're hearing is a little bit more maybe of a balance in a lot of areas, is that safe? Right? So the question is, I think, how do we set expectations? How do we set expectations? So part of what we'll have a conversation about today is how do we prep our people properly, buyers, sellers, soon to be buyers, sellers, about what's going on in the marketplace, okay? Esperanza, you said forms,
Yes.
okay, so if you were to pick which form or forms is the big,
Like for sellers, I'm not sure about, how to approach, what we're gonna charge, how.
okay. Okay, so what we're gonna charge, so by the way, so in theory, what we're gonna charge a client is an age-old challenge. Right, because one of the things we would historically practice would be the commission objection.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
All right, so I love that you said that, and here's why. Because I said to the group yesterday, I believe that our industry faces an identity crisis. Everyone know what I mean by that? We face an identity crisis. Okay? So that's the supposition that I'm gonna work from today, is that we face an identity crisis. Okay? Now, Fred, you can't answer because you were here yesterday. Okay, Kelly Vogt, who happens to be my wife over here, she's also my business partner. We talk about a lot of things other than real estate, but every now and again, we talk about real estate.
True.
Right?
Yes.
And so, we stayed a couple of nights up in Pismo Beach,
Yes.
which was lovely.
Yeah.
Right? And then we drove down yesterday,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And we had a conversation about what industry,
About this real estate one.
right, what other industry?
Oh, about the hotel industry.
The hotel industry.
Yes, we
Interesting
did.
enough. Okay. So the reason I say that we have an identity crisis is because we're really not like the hotel business. I don't believe the hotel industry has an identity crisis. What's the function, what's the core function of a hotel?
Give you a place to stay.
Give you a place to stay. Okay, put a bed in the room. If I were to ask Starbucks, what's your core function?
Coffee and food.
Right, they'll actually say we're gonna sell coffee. Now, where Starbucks changed the model a little bit, they were still just selling coffee, but really what they were doing is creating an experience. So part of what we're gonna talk about today is our job in conjunction with the experience that we can create if we choose to. So the question is, so if the core function of a hotel is what, Roger?
Give you a place to stay.
Okay, shouldn't it be easy for our industry to articulate what our core function is?
Yes.
Okay, what's our core function?
Help people buy or sell a home.
Help people buy or sell home.
And to stay out of trouble when you.
Okay, and to keep them out of harm's way.
Yeah.
All right, so interestingly enough, when these class action suits and the DOJ and everybody started talking about this thing way back when, and ultimately got here, with some of our practice changes, in lead up to that, and even today, there were many that were saying things like this to the real estate community. You need to be able to define your core value. You need to be able to define your value. You need to be able to find your value. So interestingly, this was coming from lenders were setting up workshops, title companies were setting up workshops, coaching companies were setting up workshops to tell the real estate industry how to define their value. So the real question is, what is our value in a real estate transaction? Because that goes ultimately to what we charge. Okay, now, so there's, in my opinion, there's what our job is. And then there's what many in our industry think it is. And what makes that even a little bit worse is what the consumer perceives our job to be. So yes, it is simple in degree to what Roger said, help people buy and sell homes. But is it more complicated than that in terms of the transaction itself? Yes or no?
Yes.
It also just depends on the agent, right? I mean, some agents stick a sign in front of your yard and do nothing.
Bingo. Right, so that's very, so by the way, is the top selling agent in the marketplace always the best agent?
No.
In fact, I would contend, at least in my experience and observation, that many times the top people aren't necessarily the best people at knowing the transaction. Okay, so, so for those of you who have been around me long enough now know that I'm a zealot when it comes to through the core value of an agent or a broker. Okay. So what I want to really talk about is what is the core value. Okay. And the reason I'm bringing this up as a broker is because this being recorded, when a lawsuit comes,
Yes, it is recorded.
guess whose name gets to go on the lawsuit? Mine.
Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Yeah, okay, just this morning, there was something that came in my email. I'm like, what's this? Because it had my name on it. And it wasn't a fun thing. And Mrs. Vogt here is like, what's that? Oh, it's a subpoena.
Oh, no.
That was
Already? Already.
That was the second one in 2 days.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so the question is, why do we want to do, so what I don't want, so we're gonna talk about exceptional service. We're gonna talk about bringing exceptional experience, because, we believe that when we don't do it just because of the risk management part, right? But when you create an exceptional experience, people will pay more to stay at your hotel. Does that make sense? So you need to have a really good bed in the room. And then you can put some really nice frilly stuff around the outside. So we stand half a chance to get more money as opposed to less. Now, there's a mindset issue in this industry. And I know this because aside from chatting with many of you, I still have lots of brothers and sisters at companies all up and down the state. And when this whole practice change thing happened, there was a mindset issue that our industry experienced instantaneous, just about. And that was, I can't envision that buyer paying me $50,000 or $20,000 for my services. It felt very weird that suddenly buyers potentially, after they sign that agreement that obligates them to pay us a fair chunk of change, right? Particularly in markets like this, our industry had a hard time rationalizing, even their own professional brain, that I'm worth $74,000. Yeah, that was a commission demand I signed a couple days ago. Okay. You do 10 of those a year, it's pretty good income, right? Is that right? 10 times
Yes.
7 million bucks, $750,000. That's decent, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. So but just so you know, our little team will close probably 32, 34 transactions this year. And I think our average commission is probably right around 12. It's probably 13,
12, yeah.
So we got to string a lot of fish together. The good news about these markets, you don't have to put quite as many fish together to have a really nice meal. Okay, but regardless, how we feel about that commission truly, not what we say out loud, but whatever, but we go, hey, yeah, no, I can look a buyer straight in the eye and say, I'm worth every penny of 74K to help you buy this house. Okay, now, by the way, I don't know if we are or we aren't. I don't know what the value ultimately is, but here's what I do know. Because historically, our business has been a percentage up. So if the price got bigger, the sheer amount to us increased as well. Smaller price, lower, right? But if we were to say, hey, I'm going to charge price X, 50,000, whatever, regardless of the transaction amount, right? So I'm not sure what the right amount is.
Didn't stocks used to get sold like that?
Yeah, kind of.
And now it's just a transaction?
Now it's a transaction fee, okay? So how we think about it is critically important to how Esperanza, we can say, not in a fake or delusional way, I'm worth it, darn it. Right? I used to ask my agents when I was a young branch manager, well, how do you ever come, why should you get that? Because I'm worth it, darn it. And I go, well, are you? Because the last 5 transactions you did were a trainer. So when I go back to the term that I use is called transactional excellence. I don't like compliance. What I'd like to have is an audience or a culture where people want to do a great job on the transaction. They know they know the boring stuff. The contract, the disclosure, they know that stuff inside and out, because at the end of the day, we know that that's our bed in the room. That's our bed in the room. That's our value. That is our value proposition, by the way. Helping somebody find a house, in not every case, but most cases, is not our core function. Okay, oftentimes, and we all know this since the advent of the internet and Zillow, right? They call up, we set them up on our searches, and oftentimes they're saying, hey, Zillow told me I want to go see this house, right? I'm gonna go show them a house. So by the way, the value, when Roger and I started, he's got me by a couple years. But when Roger and I started, we had a book, right?
Yeah.
Of the listings that were available.
No pictures.
We had a book. It was published every week, and we could tell what inventory was doing, by the way.
Yeah.
Big, what's the size of the book? Literally, so we had the keys to the information kingdom. So part of our value back in the good old days is we got the goods right here. We got the book. Well, guess what? That ran out the door. Okay, so yesterday we talked about fiduciary and functionary. Fiduciary and functionary. So fiduciary is, and it says this on the agency disclosure, it's the duty of utmost care, which the only way you can care, and this is not like, oh, I care about you, this is care like I take great care of you, is that you must be highly competent. Okay, and competence in our business means directly related to our understanding of the RPA and all those public disclosures, all those civil codes. Paragraph 11 that I've been talking a lot about. Okay, if you've not read paragraph 11 recently, either watch the video or read it again. Because that's the one that talks about, does anyone know what paragraph 11 is off the top of your head? Who knows what paragraph 11 is on TV? Anyone?
Well, originally I thought it was about as is. And I realized last week that there's as is in 7B, if you're referring to that.
No, I'm talking, yeah, so yeah, I know 11. Okay, so.
On some of the car forms, when you do a web search, they have a fact sheet from way back when, and it talks about as is in paragraph 11, which I learned never trust Google.
That's right. Paragraph 11 deals specifically with statutory and other disclosures. That's what paragraph talks about. Paragraph 11 talks about. So it talks about the TDS, that boring little document. It talks about the SPQ, Seller Property Questionnaire. It talks about the NHD. It talks about the condominium association documents that are required under the civil code and the documents that are required under the contract. Okay, it talks about that little fire hardening thing in the JIG form that everybody loves, right? Your home's built before 2010, subject to TDS is in extreme or very high fire hazard area. You have to have that form. And by the way, there's a rescission document, or there's a rescission period based on receipt of that form. Okay, that's paragraph 11. So when I talk about the bed in the room, we either must know that paragraph or know how to read that paragraph and when to read that paragraph. Okay, and I'm gonna give you an example why this is so important. And what I want you to tell me is whether the agent who collected the commission, regardless of what the commission amount was, were they really entitled to a commission? And here's the scenario. I literally was standing right about where your bag is at the end of July. We had just concluded my little introduction to the world. And someone came up to me afterward, and here's what they said. They said, hey, I have a question. We have a transaction that closed just about a year ago. The buyer called and they're a little upset. And I said, oh, great. Why are they upset? And they said, because they just received a notice that that the assessment that they've been talking about for the HOA is going to actually happen. And they're not happy because they didn't know about it. Okay?
Then they represented the buyer.
They represent the buyer. Okay, and I said, oh, I'm new, I didn't have access to anything yet. But what you need to do is pull the file and you make sure that you got all the association documents, including the 12 months of minutes. Okay. Including the 12 months of minutes. And so, the agent looked at me with very large eyes, and I could tell by the look, because I've seen the look before, they didn't know what I was talking about. There was another agent standing there, and the other agent said, really nice guy, by the way, he said, what do you mean 12 months of minutes? You don't need 12 minutes. The only thing that's required, He starts like quoting scripture and verse. And I said, well, unfortunately, that's not what paragraph 11 says. Paragraph 11 says there's some statutory documents that must be provided, and the contract says there's some other things that need to be provided. One of the key is 12 months of minutes. Because 12 months of minutes shows things that are coming down the pipe. Okay? So here we have a closed escrow, an assessment coming to a buyer, had no idea because the agent, in a court of law, by the way, would be called breach of fiduciary duty. I mean, that's what if this goes to sue, it won't, because it'll get settled, because it won't go that far, because it's a dead bang loser. Okay, so forget all that. The question is, so by the way, did that agent create an exceptional experience for the customer?
No.
Okay. We went over to La La Land this morning because Tara Lynn took me there. I told you I'm gonna take Kelly there when we come down, right? And I like hyped this place up. It's cool, it's cute, and everything else. I take her down and we tried to order some food. Oven's not working.
Oh, no.
Okay, great. So she orders coffee. We walk out. She loves hot coffee. She goes, am I being picky or just? I'm like, no.
It was cold.
It was cool. I mean, she said, but the place is so cute.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, but the core function is so that freaking good coffee. Does that make sense? Now, they're not gonna get sued over that. That's a primary difference. And by the way, it didn't cost us,
So ultimately, that agent is not gonna get a referral, that person.
well, they're not gonna get a referral, and that will probably end up in some sort of litigation. Okay, so the litigation of itself is bad enough, right? But the moral of the story is they didn't do their job well. They might have been a super nice agent. They might have, gave them a great closing gift. They may have done all sorts of wonderful things, but at the end of the day, they didn't do their job. Okay, so when you were to ask me, hey, should they have been paid on that? I go, no, because they didn't know what they were doing. You got that? So, by the way, all I ask of anyone, do I know every single thing in the contract? Yes or no? Every single,
No.
do I know every, no, I don't,
No.
right? But what will I do if I don't know?
You will dig in.
I will dig in. Got that? So all I'm asking for is a willingness to dig in. I love that. Thank you.
Question, on that example that you just presented,
Yes.
I don't know how it's done up north, but over here, to the best of my knowledge, in Southern California, escrow is requesting all the documents, including the HOA, and I believe it's the escrow's responsibility to get all documents. Am I
Okay.
wrong on that?
Fred, I love you.
Thank you.
Okay, he and I just met. We met on a phone call a couple of days ago. We met in person yesterday. This guy's a thinker, and I really love that. Okay, and this part I hate though, Fred, because what I'm going to tell Fred is it doesn't matter if north, south, east, west, California, anywhere. It's what does the contract say? So I'm really glad you brought this escrow thing up. So in the scramble to get business over years, escrow companies started to do all sorts of things outside of their core function of closing escrow. So what they started doing, oh, we'll order that NHG report for you. Okay.
And they order HOA.
Who orders our NHG reports?
We
When?
do.
What?
We do,
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
open.
That's the agent.
When we list product. So all those things, so statutorily, the seller is obligated to provide those documents. What's happened is our industry has burdened the escrow holders, and they're not gonna tell you no. But it's actually a little bit of a poor practice. So if your escrow company is ordering them properly, i.e. complying with the escrow instructions, which part of that, or doesn't matter where you're at, is in paragraph 11, where it says sellers responsible for all these statutory documents under the civil code, and they're required to provide the following. So if you're relying on your escrow holder to order those things, make sure you get them early.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you don't have time to rely on an escrow company to
Right.
order your HOA docs. They should be ordered right when you take the list.
They should be. Right. That is the best practice. So Roger, I'm glad you said that. So as much as we can do upfront, our goal when we list a property is so that when we ultimately essentially turn it over to our transaction coordinator, her job is, in her mind, she's like, I don't have to do anything. All she's now doing is routing when we get the buyer to make sure they're getting the documents, and she's giving the timelines and all those things. So our client is compliant with those things. Okay, so interestingly, on literally within 3 days of that first conversation, I had another agent call me and say, hey, I got this problem, blah, 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 started to tell me. And real quickly, I recognized it was another paragraph 11 issue. And it had to do with HOA docs and 12 months of minutes. And this is a quote roughly from the agent. I've sold hundreds of condos and I've never gotten the minutes. And I'm the new broker, license on the line. I'm thinking, uh-oh, that's scary. So the point of this 11 is chocked full of information. So if I were a seller or a buyer, by the way, here's what I want to know before I hired an agent. What is your knowledge of the RPA and specifically these very specific paragraphs? Paragraph 11, for example, paragraph 14, for example. What does paragraph 14 have to deal with, anyone? Jasmine, paragraph 14.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so paragraph 14 is the one that gives us our rules for, sort of put you on the spot.
That's okay.
So paragraph 14 is the one that talks about contingencies, delivery of the documents, blah, 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 notices to perform, all those fun things. So one of the things that we're gonna do, in terms of how we present ourselves to the buying and selling public, because here's the trick. Is everyone okay if I call my business partner wife honey? So, does the real estate consumer instinctually know to ask a question of an agent? Hey, agent,
No,
how do you, yes, you already-
no, they don't.
fiduciary duty, how are you gonna meet your fiduciary duty? Does a consumer know to ask that question?
No, they
instinctively?
don't even know
So
what
our
that is.
core function, our vet in the room, is to know the transactional documents inside and out, so that we can tell them what their
What's
rights and obligation under the contracts, so on and so forth. Okay, so when we get to marketing our knowledge, because that's really what we're gonna market here. Okay, how many nice people in the room? Raise your hand. Raise your hand, yeah, any nice people on Zoom? Okay, so look, you wanna be highly relational. Right, and you wanna be highly technical. Because like a great surgeon, at the end of the day, what's gonna break the tie potentially in two areas, what they're gonna pay you. Because if they just think we're a bunch of social media stars, because that's what our business has become a lot. It's like, oh, look at that cool agent on Facebook or on Instagram or on Reels. Okay, being cool on Facebook or Instagram, you can do that. I don't have a problem with that. As long as you're good at your job, then you might be worth that money. Does that make sense? So we need to be unabashed, and I believe this is the way we've always, this is literally how we sell ourselves to the buying and selling public. Right? Okay, we tell them, I make a joke, and it's a joke, and it's true. So Kyle, let's see, Roger, you met Kyle when he was down here. You met Kyle. Nice young man,
Super sweet,
likable,
adorable.
right? So if we go on an appointment together, we're a pretty powerful group. We're pretty hard to say no to, because we're like, oh my gosh, right? So everyone, and Kyle and I everyone loves her. That's easy. So if this is a lovability contest, if we bring her, we're gonna win. But here's the deal. It's not just because she's lovable. She knows the stuff inside and out. So we're unabashed about saying, hey, we might be, the likable votes and whatever the case may be, but at the end of the day, we don't want you to work with us just because you know us and you think we're wonderful people. We want you to work with us because why?
Because we know what we're doing.
Because we know we're doing. So that's literally what we sell to people. And we message that same thing within our databases. Okay, our past clients, all those things. Yes, they like us, they love us, whatever you want to say, but they also know that we're exceptional at our job. Does that make sense? Because the core function, when we get to Esperanza, what do I charge? Okay, there's a direct correlation between your knowledge, your ability to communicate your knowledge, and how it protects them. And what you're willing to look them in the eye and say, we don't have an issue with charging X, Y, or Z. So the question got brought up yesterday. So we've said for years that the job of an exceptional agent on the listing side is threefold. It's marketing, negotiation, and transaction management. Okay, of those three, marketing, negotiation, and transaction management, which is the least important?
Marketing.
Now, which do you think the buying and selling public thinks on the listing side? Is the most important? Isn't that interesting? Okay, so what we do is we do provide exceptional marketing. We look them square in the eye. Our youngest daughter, Kelsey, is our photographer, and she's fabulous. And we do walkthrough videos and all this stuff. And we do this, by the way, whether we sell let's see. Well, what's our least expensive? $69,000? Yeah, $69,000 mobile home, or 1.2, Rob Miller stuff. We give roughly the same level of service regardless. Rob might have got a little bit more, but we do some really cool marketing stuff because we want the world to see it and go, wow, these guys are really good. Because marketing is what tricks them. Marketing is where they go, oh, that's really cool. Esperanza's marketing. Let's call her out and talk to her. Okay, so have fabulous marketing. I'm not saying don't have fabulous marketing. Give exceptional service and though know the transaction exceptionally well. So we've always said the job of an exceptional agent, and we don't say this, Warren, how are you? We don't say this we believe, we say it as we know. We know that the job of an exceptional agent is threefold on the listing side. It's marketing, negotiation, and transaction management. Okay. So the question got brought up yesterday around well, what's the buyer side? Because now well, just a quick, has anybody yet had their buyer pay you on a closing?
Not yet, they haven't had to.
I've had it done actually years ago.
Pay you, not the seller pay you through an office. Okay,
I know, I have a client that he was always in a cash buyer and he would always back out the commission and write a check.
okay, great. Okay, so there's one. Who else? Because yesterday we had Christine Wheeler raise her hand, so I kind of have one, so on and so forth. But right now, it's still in the world a little bit. One of two things appears to be happening. Either sellers are countering saying, nope, I don't want to do anything. That's a pretty smallish number. Or they're countering back with, yeah, okay, I'll play ball and I'll pay that amount under 3G3 of the RPA with a SPVB, right? Or some derivation. But here's the trick. So what we want to do is we want to prepare our presentations for what I'm going to call a worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario for a buyer when they sign that contract with you? What's their worst case scenario?
They can't afford it.
They won't pay you.
Yeah, well, their worst case scenario is they're paying you the money.
Yeah.
So if you're at a 3% buyer's broker deal, right, and it's $1 million home, seller won't play ball, and they have the financial resources, they're obligated to pay you $30K. That's their worst case scenario. They're going to pay you $30K. So what I'm going to build my presentation around is that. I'm not going to build my presentation around, well, I'm pretty sure a seller somewhere on the universe will pay something and it won't be as bad for my poor people. Because that's what we're doing right now as an industry, right? so Kelly and Kyle had these conversations quite a bit, and we're realists, by the way. Right, we're like, so what we practice for is for Chasten, that's one of Kelly's buyers right now, Chasten, here's what's it's gonna look like. You now sign this agreement, here's all the things that we do. And we've already sold that to her because she knows that from working with us, but we'll tell her again, because now when she signs that agreement, it's gonna be, because she's buying right around $1 million. So it'll be $25,000 to $30,000. Then we'll have a conversation with her that when we write the offer, the seller may or may not be open to pay some or none or all of that amount. Does that make sense? Okay, so, my business partner, Lenny, didn't know I was gonna ask her this many questions. So how does your tummy feel? So you're really good at your job, you know your stuff, you know if you don't know it, you either check it out or ask your broker, okay? How do you feel in your stomach going to Chasten and say, hey, Chasten, you're gonna owe me 30K,
I hate it.
okay? She's the broker's wife, business partner who sells a bunch of real estate. So that's called real. Okay, now, we build our presentation though around the fact that we're really good at our job. Here's the things that we do. Here's how we protect your interest. Here's how we use our knowledge and expertise of the contract and the disclosures to make sure that we do a great job for you. Okay, because most agents are going to have the same visceral reaction as my own wife and business partner. And that is, I hate asking people for money. Even though I'm really good at my job, most agents don't like saying, hey, guess what? Pony up 50K, 30K. Okay,
And even it makes it more difficult when you're dealing with a friend or relative and doing business with them,
Yeah.
much worse.
well, so this is interesting. It's really interesting to bring that up. So we don't give discounts to family members or friends, by the way. Okay, now we did just do one-on-one, but it was only because Kelly felt bad. Our son already got the listing agreement signed. Okay, family member had passed away, not an immediate family member. Our son went out, listed the property and charged them. What we charge, we charge 3% on the listing side, that's what we've always charged. In the old days, we then decide, okay, how much do we want to offer on the other side, and then we go 3 plus 2.5 is 5.5, and that would have been our commission in the old days. So it was only after we made a business decision to give them a discount that we gave a discount. So we believe that friendship, familyship is a two-way street. Okay, and I want you to think about this. If they're that good of a friend, they'll pay you. Now, by the way, we don't believe that you should work with family or friends unless your family or friend happens to be really good at their job. Does that make sense?
Also, if you're the type of person that's grinding everybody down, expect to be ground down. Maybe I'm a generous heart.
No, that's bingo, that's really good. So the point though is, how are we building our presentations around this? Now, before we get to presentation, I'm going to this little chart that I drew yesterday. You Zoom watchers, it's not anything fancy, don't worry, okay? So this is close of escrow, and this is lead generation, okay? Now, by the way, there's coaching companies built specifically around our business is not good at lead generating consistently. Is that true, Roger? That's true, okay? There's guys flying around in corporate jets based on the fact that they know real estate agents don't lead generate consistently, and they sell coaching programs, so on and so forth, but I digress. So lead generation, and we lead generate so that we can get an appointment. So what I'm just talking about is what we're doing is we're talking about what's the core function of our job and how can I create a great experience for the customer. Okay, so it's not just a beautiful cup with lukewarm coffee inside, sorry, Lala, okay? Okay, but that's the experience, right? So we want a beautiful cup and we want amazing coffee inside, okay? So our core function, our job, our coffee, our bed in the room, so to speak, is this, and then this is all the ribbon and bow. Okay, so you want to have both. You want to be a great doctor with great bedside manner. So you want to have systems so that you can create an exceptional experience. So if you check into the Ritz-Carlton, you know, the Four Seasons, all those, they all have a system so that when you check into their environment, they can create an exceptional experience. That's why people pay more. So when we maximize this, what we're doing, so by the way, our value is what our value is. Okay, what I'm worth as an agent is what I'm worth. But what really matters is what they perceive the value to be. Because let's just say I'm worth this, but they perceive this, what am I gonna get? I'm gonna get this unless I can figure a way to close this gap. Okay, so we can be exceptional at our job, but if we don't articulate, communicate, and demonstrate it, we're not aligning real value with perceived value. So that's part of this. Then that's where this experience starts to come in, because then this helps build the perceived. So the steps that you take in your pre-listing, your buyer packages, all those things, those are the things that start building value in the mind of the buying and selling public. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here for a second though, to lead generation. How many of you have your lead generation dialed? Perfect. I got leads falling out of the sky. Okay, great. So you're like most people in real estate America today. So what I'm gonna suggest is, or the questions I'm gonna ask is what's your lead generation plan? We're not gonna talk about that in detail today, but what's your lead generation plan? What do you do? And is it referral based or is it knocking cold doors and that sort of thing? If it's referral based, which most people are, what I'm gonna ask is, what am I doing, particularly in the time that we exist right now in real estate, to illuminate what's going on with people in our database? So we created a little marketing piece that we actually shared with the Market Center, that talks to the consumer, the buying and selling public, about the changes that we've gone through and are going through. Seller commission, buyer commission. I don't know if those open. Don't electrocute yourself. Okay. So what I want to have you consider in the lead generation side, Roger, you're doing a new newsletter, right?
Yes,
Okay, are you wrote a book too,
I did write a book.
right? So if you happen to be if you do video, if you do podcasts, if you do newsletters, anything, here'd be my question. If we've gone through a big change, wouldn't it make sense to let our people know that there's changes? So next time they refer somebody to you or use you, when you start talking BRBC, buyer rep and broker compensation, they're gonna go, oh, I know what that is, because they talked about that in their last newsletter. Does that make sense? I don't think we do a very good job. So if our core function, which I know it is the contract and the disclosure, all those things, why don't we tell the buying and selling public, hey, here's the true value of an agent, right? And here's some of the most commonly misunderstood parts of the contract. So for example, Jasmine said as is. How many of you have ever seen a counteroffer in which an agent uses the term as is? Okay, so here's a funny thing. Why would they do that when the contract already says it's as is?
Because I've never read the contract.
Because they never read the contract. Okay, so one of the things you could do to regenerate, to educate the buying and selling public are things around what's actually required of a seller in a real estate transaction. So when they get to the time to write an offer with you, they already understand what as is means. Right? It doesn't mean that they don't have an inspection right. In fact, when you read the definition of what as is says in the contract, because in California, as is, in order for it to be legally enforceable, has to have a written, meaningful definition in order to be enforced. So when an agent writes on a counteroffer as is, it's not even enforceable. Which as is you talking about? You're talking about the one that was in the offer already? You're talking about as is. There has to be, still have to disclose material facts, seller has to. Buyer has to have the right to investigate, and there has to be a written meaningful definition as to what as is means in California in order for it to be enforceable. So one of my former attorneys that I worked with, her name was Vicki Nador. She would say the agent might as well write, I'm an idiot. She said that. Right? She was a pistol. Yeah, still is today. She's retired now, but she would literally say things like that. And she would say, tell your GD agents not to do that.
And a lot of sellers, when you meet with them, is I wanna sell as is.
Right, right.
That's their-
Okay, great. So Roger just said something, say it really loud.
A lot of sellers, or most sellers, when you meet with them, they say, I wanna sell the house as is.
Okay, great. So what do we say to that?
You are selling it as, every contract is, it's an
There you go.
as-is contract.
Right. So what we do is we bring that portion of the contract to life. Right? So feel, felt, found, we all know that, feel, felt, found. I completely understand how you feel because I felt that way too. What I found was, here's what the contract says.
Where they want you to say in the MLS, I want you to make clear it's as is.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
which I always say, well, it's as is anyway, and frankly, if you say that, you're calling attention to something that may not even be there.
Right, right.
People will think it's broken.
What's
Something's
the
wrong with it.
suspicion?
Yeah.
Right. So that's the only thing. So that's great. So just making sure that we're pointing out so what I said yesterday in the group, and I want to make sure, so what's the difference? What's the difference between an agent and a broker in California?
Different license
Signature.
requirements.
Harder
Few
test.
hours more study.
Okay,
No, but I did-
50 questions.
Yeah.
50 questions. Now, it's a little more than that. You have to have 2 years experience. Now, when Roger and I got on, if you had a college degree of any sort, you could sit for the exam out of the gate, and they changed that requirement a few years back. So now you have to have 2 years experience. Now, here's a good question. What kind of experience must you have?
Not
You have to
state.
have it hanging with a license, you have to
You
hang
just
your
have to have
license
2
with
years of
active.
experience, and that broker has to sign that you have 2 years of experience.
It doesn't include closing a sale.
It doesn't include anything, doesn't include any competence measure at all. So when we were driving down here, Mrs. Vogt was ranting and raving and going, California, they should make it, you should have to show that you know what you're doing to keep your license or get your license. I know. But apparently they don't want to do that. Okay, so 50 questions. Now you do have to take some additional open book classes. And then you take the same exam that we took as sales associates way back when. And with 50 more questions. And passed with, I think, a C instead of a C minus. Okay, and guess what? You now have license to kill, so to speak, metaphorically, in California. Okay, so understand, getting into our business, staying in our business, all those things, isn't very hard. The barrier of entry is not very hard. Part of what we tell we communicate in our stuff ongoing is that there's 470,000 agents in California, plus or minus 470,000 of varying degrees of competence, skill, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So to get a broker's license doesn't take much. So yes, I'm the broker. Great. So here's what I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to give you opinion unless it's an opinion around practice. Like, here's how I would handle that situation. Here's what we say in our practice when we get to that situation. Here's how we communicate as is, so and so forth. I'll give you an opinion about that. But if you were to say, hey, I want an opinion about how to properly deliver a notice of form. Okay, or what this or what that. Because if it's what the state of California says, the federal government says, the contract that's been agreed to between the principals, not us, then you're generally going to get a response. Let's take a look at the contract. Okay? Because the purpose of the contract is for the parties to agree on the financial terms and all that. So Roger, approximately, if you remember, when you first began 35 years ago, okay, how long was the contract back then?
It was no more than 4 pages, it might even be 2.
Yeah, okay, okay. So all the mumbo jumbo that's there now around civil codes and all those things was AWOL. Okay, so is that interesting? So here's what the contract now is. It's an agreement to the financial terms, the closing dates and blah, 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 and then it's a laundry list of things that the buyer needs to look out for and be aware of, and things that the parties
It's
must
like every
do
lawsuit that ever
disclose.
happened.
Every lawsuit's ever happened. So by now, many of you know the term EMD. What does EMD stand for?
Earnest money deposit.
Okay, great. And where's that in the contract?
Nowhere.
It's nowhere to be found. Okay, so I use that as an example.
I forget about that.
Yeah. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, it's called initial deposit. There's nothing in the contract that refers to earnest money deposit, or certainly not EMD. The reason that's really important is Roger said something about lawsuits. Now, I don't know why EMD went away. There was a time, in fact, one of the old deposit receipts actually said, receipt and earnest, it actually said earnest money at the top of the form, way back when. Okay? For some reason, I don't know the reason. I really don't care what the reason is. But the CAR decided at some revisions ago to eliminate the term earnest money deposit. It was done intentionally by some attorney. I don't know why. But what I don't know why is why our industry still uses the term that doesn't exist in the RPA, the Residential Purchase Agreement. Does that make sense?
Christine has a question.
Christine, yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
It's funny that you say that, because now that I'm so aware of it, that I've been seeing on escrow, or like having a, seller net sheet or whatever,
Yep.
are different places. I'm still seeing that earnest
Yeah.
money deposit. And so every time I see it, now that this is so stuck in my head, I'm like, like it's a flag for me. So just curious, it's not industry wide yet. They're still referring it to that.
No, I'm keenly aware of it. It drives me cuckoo. Every now and again, I'll play with our escrow officer that we use, and because they still use the term. And I say, hey, I'm not, I would say, hey, Jennifer, I'm not your boss, but I'm curious.
Christine,
That's just what we've always called it.
I took my broker's exam about 6 weeks ago, and it was referred to as EMD on the state broker exam.
So by the way, Jasmine, that could be okay. And the reason why is because if somebody were to draft a purchase contract and use that term, then that would be fine. So the only point that I'm making here is when there are changes in our industry, right? We should understand what those changes are, align with those changes. But what Roger said earlier is absolutely correct. The reason we have a different wording, for those who've been around long enough, the agency confirmation years ago was not in the contract. And then when they added it to the contract, it was like on page 5. Where's agency confirmation today?
Page one.
Okay, why do you suppose it went from nowhere to page 5 to page 1?
Lawsuits.
Nobody's getting it signed.
Yeah, it's importante. Got it? So folks, there's a rationale and a reason, okay? So when you're looking at these documents, remember what Roger Horn said. Roger Horn said, it was, I don't know, maybe 2 pages and then it grew. Okay, and then remember that the agreement is sales price, close date, financial terms, who's paying this, that, good. And then paragraph 11. Okay, what's required in a transaction? So why am I making a big deal about it? Number one, because my license is on the line. I want to see as few subpoenas as possible. I'd rather go golfing with Roger. I'm sure I'm sitting in a deposition or something, right? So what we want to look at though is what is the core function of an agent? So if I'm a buyer, one of the questions when I go from lead generation to setting my appointment, what do my appointments look like? Now, I recommend, and this is the way I was taught by my mentor, to practice for the tough ones. Practice for the worst case scenario. Hey, buyer, you're gonna have to pay me $30K. Practice for the competitive interviews, so on and so forth. Now, by the way, whether or not we're working with, so 90+% of our industries, of our businesses repeat and referral, right? And we do work with some strangers every now and again, okay? But our practice and procedure is largely the same regardless of the relationship. And by the way, this goes very much to friend. What we found is our friends and families, when we demonstrate confidence throughout our listing and buyer process, they go, oh. They actually know what they're doing. So they don't look at us and say, hey, will you drop your fee for us? They don't ask. We say, here's what we charge. And they say, okay, great, where do we sign? Okay, so there's no magic to it, because when you walk through the process of asking really good questions up front, right? You're actually demonstrating your character and your competence. So that when you get to the point where press hard for copies, as they used to say in the old days, sign the agreement, right? The probability of them signing goes way up. Does that make sense? So here's what this isn't. This isn't just go learn the forms and the paperwork to keep from getting sued. That's a really good reason to do it though, right? Right? Do it so that you can actually articulate a point of differentiation in the marketplace. Okay? That's really what this is about, because you're going to build that. So you are more valuable. The more knowledge you have about the contract and the disclosures, the more value you are. The more value you are. There's no question about that. Okay? So then the question is, how do we demonstrate that? So I'm going to back up for a second. So I said, well, I'm the broker. My goal isn't to have you say, well, you must do it because I'm the broker. I'm not into that. Okay? I want to create a culture in which the concept of transactional excellence, oh, I get that. I can actually go up against a top agent in town and demonstrate my knowledge on the appointment and tip the scales in my favor to get the listing or get the buyer broker sign at a higher fee than not. Does that make sense? So part of it is us taking the time to read the contract. So there's a couple ways you can do that. Number one, I would recommend on every transaction, at the close of the transaction, you do a recap of the transaction. One of the things that I talked about yesterday was, so again, doing our job exceptionally well and creating a great experience along the way for the buying and selling public. So here's the question: when you close an escrow, how do you know if you've done a good job?
Clients are happy.
If your clients are happy, how would you know if they're happy?
Gotta ask them.
You gotta ask them. Or not. See, here's the trick, right? So the good news is we're all independent contractors. What's the bad news? We're all independent contractors. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask, as Roger said, we're gonna ask them.
You know, I'm gonna think about that because, you know, you were talking about command the other day and the documents.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want to give your client a PDF of all the things they signed at the end of the transaction, which is a nice thing to do.
It is. How do you do it?
Yeah.
A good question, but I'm gonna find out.
Okay.
I don't know as I'm sitting here.
Okay.
Yeah, so what Roger said is, you know, how do I put a nice tidy bow around the transactional documents? So they have those for their tax accountant, their future reference, you know, whatever the case may be. And as I'm sitting here, I don't know yet, but that's something we can definitely figure that out.
We used to get a CD, you know, another company, we used to get a CD, which nobody looks at.
Right,
There's gotta
right.
be some
Yes,
way.
there has to be a way that because yes, there has to be a way. So we'll find that out.
Dropbox is one way.
Yes, yeah, it is. So there should be a way.
Okay, we can download a file from command. You can download your whole file.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, the entire file
Christine does all her stuff, so she knows it. Okay,
at once, Christine? Anyway.
okay, so Christine's gonna do a class for us on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ha ha ha.
So- okay, so the question is, how did I do as an agent? That's what I want to know. So ultimately what we want to know with people is, did we communicate with them the way they promised? Did we treat them like family as we promised? And would they use us and refer us in the future? That's really the three questions. So I would recommend a post-close of escrow survey. Okay, the other thing I would do after they complete that survey is I would call them and I'd say, hello, Kelly,
Yeah. Hello, Chris.
how are you?
Great.
Hey, did I catch you at a good time?
Yes.
Hey, the reason I'm calling, I just want to check in, see how you and Kris are loving the new home.
We love the home.
Yep, and hey, I want to thank you for filling out that survey. You gave us really high marks and I'm humbled and flattered and I really appreciate that. And though I'd like to ask you one more quick question, if that would be okay.
That's okay.
If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing in the process, when we helped you buy that home or sell that home, what would be one thing that we could improve upon?
Oh, let's see. The number of documents that just kept coming to my email every single day.
Okay, yeah, that's like a real answer. Okay, so by the way, this is under the category, this is role play, by the way. But one of the things that we share with people is it's our goal to take them out of the land of confusion and into the land of clarity. Because what happens when you open escrow?
A lot of emails.
Flood of emails, TCs, escrow people, lenders, blah, 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 blah. So it's our job, we believe, to orchestrate that. And if we can't control the flow from one of the providers, although we do team with RTC, right? RTC operates the way we ask her to operate. Okay, our escrow officer. So what we're continually looking at is to create a better experience, because you can have a great experience up until you get down to the end and you're like, this is crazy. Right? Or what's worse, the TC on the other side is sending documents that unbeknownst to you, your TC sent to the client. And your client's going, why am I signing this? And the agent's going, I don't even know what that is. And how did you get that? Okay. Or the other agent puts in the signing package, a document that they want your client to sign that you've never seen, and it ends up in the closing package somehow.
I believe it's the agent's responsibility to tell the buyer or the seller that expect probably 300, 400, 500 pages in your email
Yes,
throughout the transaction.
yes,
And on top of that, expect several hundred pages from the lender. And
yes,
expect all this, so the client is not surprised by any of this.
correct. Right, it
The
could,
last thing that we want is the client to be surprised by anything.
yes,
It's not a birthday party, don't
Right.
surprise them.
right, right. So without question, setting expectation about what's going to happen is critically important. Okay, and as you team with your transaction coordinator, if it happens to be a lender you work with, an escrow company you work with, even if it's not, we will still call the other escrow holder to introduce ourselves, tell them who we are, how we operate, how we don't operate, so on and so forth. Okay, and ask them to do certain things certain ways. Okay, because at the end of the day, we are very quick to point out to anyone involved in the transaction that it's the real estate consumer that's paying all of us. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's the consumer that's paying the escrow fee, the title fee, the lender fees, the agent's fees. Okay, and yet the consumer often gets lost in the shuffle of all those people. Okay, so when I talk about creating an exceptional experience, there are things that will be out of your control, and this is under the category of control what you can control. And then continually refine your systems after each transaction and be honest. And where a lot of this came from, I quit a corporate position in May of 16, and in June of 16, I think it was Holly's mom's house that we was first, right? I think that was in July of 2016. So I had been out of the field for quite some time. I'd been running a large region. I'd run a large branch previous to that. Wasn't selling real estate, but I was theorizing and hypothesizing many different things. And so I get back in the field, touch my first transaction, not realizing how much the world had changed. And we opened escrow. And literally, I was aghast. I was thinking to myself, poor seller. We picked the phone up and I said, I want to apologize for something. Right? And I said, I'm gonna get this under control. And she was an elderly lady, by the way, and it was, unfortunately, she was actually good at technology. But it was like the zing, zing, zing fest. And I'm watching this as an experienced broker going, this is unfair. So, I did a buyer class a couple weeks ago, and there's that, anybody remember the elephant letter that got sent out? Okay, and we talk about eating an elephant one bite at a time. And we talk about what a big process the transaction is. And it's our job to help navigate and guide to help them have as best experience possible given the realities. So we definitely point that out. Okay, so at the end of the day, yes, I'm the broker, but I'm not going to give you an opinion. I'm going to say, what does the contract say? If somebody says, well, this is required because Joe from 10 years ago said it was required. We have a document right now. It was very ironic. So behind the scenes, I'm reviewing a lot of our things. And I'm stumbling across some things. Do y'all know, y'all have this, we have this internet, this intranet site. You can click on there and you go see a bunch of documents. Has anyone gone through that recently? Yeah, so I go through that as the new guy. I didn't get a great orientation. And I'm clicking through documents and I'm like, what is a lot of stuff? Just being really candid, I have 3 markets there, so I'm looking, it's crazy. So, and because by the way, my goal in working with our team leaders and our staff and everyone else is to have you have a better experience. Because when agents have a better experience at a company, what do they tend to do? Yeah, they tend not to leave. And they tend to say, hey, Kathy and Joe and Fred, you should work over here because it's so awesome. So part of the goal over this is to create a better experience for you and ultimately for your customers. Okay, so they're not going, why am I signing this document? So ironically, I'm going through some of them and I come across one of the advisory addendums that was created some time ago. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Not sure why that's on there. So I'm thinking to myself, in the meantime, I got this Fred guy calling me out of the blue. Him. And or maybe email, I don't remember. We ended up talking on the phone. He's like, yeah, I'm going through, Fred, by the way, if you don't know, came to us from Simi Valley KW, and he's going through the intranet stuff going, hey, what is some of this stuff? And I'm like, well, I'm new too, and I'm still trying to figure it out, just being honest, right? So I'm going through this and I'm looking at it. So so what I want you to know is that we're not going to do it just the way we did it because that's how we used to do it. Okay, in fact, on one of the documents, this isn't anybody's fault, but ultimately it is our problem, and really it's my problem if we don't get these situated. So those of you who've been here a while, you know, at the top of one of the addendums, there's a 575 fee thingy the buyer's supposed to pay. Well, that was all pre-settlement stuff. Okay, that verbiage that's on there now is really bad and wrong. Okay, so when I saw that, I'm like, uh-oh. So I sent that to legal. That's under review now. We're going to update all those things. The reason that's important, I ain't into documents. I'm only into documents so that we can comply with federal, state, local laws and help the buying and selling public meet their obligations that they have under the contract and one another. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to come up with some obscure, well, I'm a broker, therefore we're going to do that. That's not what I'm about. I'm not about compliance. I'm about trying to complete, or not trying. There is no try. Do or do not. That's what I taught you in bold, right? Do or do not. There is no try. Is creating a culture in which agents want to understand this stuff so well that, like the Christine Wheelers of the world, go, hey, Kris, you're missing something on your checklist, because she's an agent who knows the stuff so well. Does that make sense? Instead of us saying, well, this is required because we said so. Because if you ask the average agent, why do we require these things? The honest answer would be, I have no freaking clue. Okay, so that's a big project, but that's really why we're here. Well, I don't talk. I have multiple personality disorder. There's only one of me. She's kind of part of it, but that's only why, because she sits next to me in the car.
And obviously other brokers send you their broker addendums and all that. I've had
Yes.
several clients not want to sign them. They don't have to if it's not in the contract.
That is ding, ding, ding. Okay, so, here's what we don't wanna do, and this is, I'm so glad you brought that up. So there's another very bad practice in our industry. Okay, so number one, so our industry has become run largely by transaction coordinators. There was a time where agent populations years ago said, hey, it's terrible to have a transaction coordinator. Nobody should. Now everyone has them, just about, with some rare exception. And by the way, this isn't about having a transaction coordinator or not. Okay, so at the end of the day, the transaction coordinator doesn't decide what's required in a file, what's required in a contract. What's required in a contract is what the contract requires, right? So what we have to know as professionals is we have to know, number one, the difference between an addendum, an advisory, a disclosure, so on and so forth.
And
So by the way-
amendment also,
What's that?
no difference on that amendment.
Well, that's a technical thing, but we can talk about that later. If your client is asked to sign an addendum, okay? So let me first talk about, I'm gonna talk about something very controversial. Amendment versus addendum. Okay, now, you back in the old days, we didn't have all these forms. Okay, if we wanted to change the terms of the contract, do you know what we would use? An addendum. Okay, and then one day, everybody got all excited at CR and said, oh, no, we need to use an amendment, and there's a purpose for it, and it's fine. But here's what we don't want to do. Guess what? If you have an existing contract, you're gonna be told you should use an amendment, and that's fine, and that's proper. But guess what? Contracts, so let's say we have a ratified contract price at $800,000, and the parties decide on an addendum that the price is now $750, and they both sign it. What's the price? What is it? Say it.
$750.
$750. In a court of law, they don't go, oh, I'm sorry, that's invalid because it says addendum and not amendment. So the only thing that an amendment does, okay, so any of those forms can be used. We've gotten hyper fixated on, oh, it's on the right form. How can a contingency be removed?
Contingency removal.
Contingency removal form. Well, let's pretend the form didn't exist. How would you remove a contingency? Well, I'd take a blank sheet of paper and fill out the address and the party's names and say, we hereby remove our contingency, sign right here. So we've gotten into this form proliferation, which is great, because what they tried to do is make the job easier for the agent. And in an effort to do it to some degree, I would argue they convoluted and so on and so forth. So I don't want to get hung up on amendment versus amendment, I'm right here. The fact is the parties agreed to change the term of the contract. Okay, my attorney, former attorney, she's retired now, Vicky, she would say, you know, Kris, my favorite form? A blank sheet of paper. Properly completed, by the way. Okay, so a blank sheet of paper, that's not right, no. I mean, you fill it out correctly, okay? So what's the difference between an addendum and a disclosure?
Addendum's adding something to the contract.
Yeah.
Disclosure is just telling you something.
Yeah, disclosure is telling you something. So for example, if you want to be nice, and if the other broker sends a disclosure or an advisory that they want you to sign or the client to sign. So first of all, there's no, unless there's a contractual obligation,
Right? They don't
your
have
client
to
doesn't have to sign it. Now, is there any harm in signing it? And again, at the end of the day, this is up to you and your client, how you want to navigate through this. Signing a mere disclosure. Okay, you're disclosing that, you know, a meteorite might hit the earth. Thank you for that one. Okay. Versus an addendum. So I just saw a contract that closed in the market center a couple days ago. And there's the Keller Williams Calabasas addendum that talks about the retrofit in the city of Los Angeles and blah, blah, blah. That is a disclosure and an addendum. So if I were the other agent who suddenly thrusts that upon me after ratification, I'm not gonna just willy-nilly have my client sign something because it says in that situation, who's gonna pay for the retrofit for it?
No way.
Okay, so we must know. Okay, we must know the difference between a disclosure and advisory, which are essentially innocuous, they're harmless. If your client signs it, okay? But with that said, we are always looking at the backdrop of the experience, because as Kelly said, if our clients are just getting this constant barrage and all we're doing is piling on more miscellaneous crap, I don't think that helps I don't think it helps our industry and certainly doesn't help our client. Okay, but if it's an addendum, 100% correct. So just because your broker says, well, we must get that signed. My response to that, if I were the other broker, show me where it says that, buddy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yes, so unless it's contractually required, statutorily required. Then it's, again, if it's an addendum, they need to understand that they are modifying the rights to the current ratified contract. So the one I saw the other day had that form and it was signed like 14 days after ratification. And I said, well, what would have happened had the parties not agreed? Then you would have had a problem on your hands, because now who's gonna pay for what? Okay,
I make it a habit to have KW addendum part of the RPA, right, in the terms. And it's, you know, where it says you check all documents you're going to.
Yeah. yeah,
That's part of it, and then they count back out.
correct. So, Christine, I just barely see your hand raised, so I'm gonna get to you in one quick second. So yes, so we're gonna, as we start getting some of these documents corrected, and hopefully we'll get that one corrected pretty quickly. The best practice would be, if you want it to be part of the deal, the time to present it make it part of your offer. That's exactly correct. Okay, because if we're chasing down an addendum later, now sometimes the other party will sign an addendum because their agent doesn't know any better. So this is again the good news, bad news. The bad news is agents in our business don't know the contract and the paperwork and the disclosures. That's the bad news. The good news is sometimes the other clients sign things because they don't know the contract and the disclosures and all those. That makes sense? So sometimes we get lucky. Christine.
I basically was just gonna say that. So I have always, since our, since our other broker had it part of our office, I would put the KW addendum on the RPA in under other addenda. And then under the advisories, I'd put the KW ABA. And as far as the other things that I'd be adding, like, the VCA, MCA, SFLS, I would add everything down there, which in the appropriate area, whether, like you just said, an addendum or an advisory or
Right.
disclosure or whatever. And I would say, I don't know, out of my last 20 buyer deals that I did, it was part of the contract, and only maybe one or two didn't want to sign it. And I said, but it's part of the contract. And then as far as escrow goes, they'll be saying, hey, where's this document? And because it becomes that. So whether we're going to do that moving forward or not, I'm not sure, but
Yes, well, that is the best practice. So if we have something, so if we represent a buyer, it would be no different than, if we wanted to make something a contingent sale and we didn't attach the COP form and send it with the offer, you wouldn't have a contingent sale, right? So yeah, so the best practice is not to try to get things signed that are amending the original terms have been accepted after the ratification of the contract. Because then you're leaving your client at risk that they say, no, I'm not signing this document. I'm not required to sign this document, therefore I'm not going to sign this document. Yeah, so that is the best practice. On the other side of that form, and we will get into more detail on a lot of these disclosures, because the other trend that I've witnessed very early on is that we have some files closing. For example, in the city of Los Angeles, where the things that are required by the ordinances in some cases aren't being done, and are quote unquote being waived, which is problematic on a couple of fronts. So there'll be some education on that, but that's largely what, as you know, that addendum speaks to a lot of the issues in the retrofit and water and
But a buyer, let's say a guy's buying a fixer.
Okay,
And he's
ask it real loud so they can hear.
you have an investor, he's buying a house as is, I mean, it's all as is. but
Yeah.
Truly, he's gonna take care of all that.
Yeah.
For the seller.
Yeah.
And he's going to be redoing the house, so he doesn't wanna start changing.
So what do you wanna
toilets.
do? Yeah, okay, so here's, so I come out of a culture way back when, I mentioned Vicky before. And Kelly and I were just having this conversation on the drive over this morning. So here's the world that I came out of. Vicky Nader was our, well, she wasn't our lead attorney, it was a guy named Dan, but nobody liked Dan, and Vicky was the smart one anyhow, so we always went to Vicky. So Vicky would say, jump. And the broker, the managers, everybody else would say, how high? Okay, so, what I'm doing as we speak, I am, in, conversation in many areas with Jeff Kahn. Some of you may know Jeff, some may not, but Jeff is our legal counsel. To get best practices from him on many of these issues, okay? So the question about what Roger just brought up is, about waiving the requirements that are imposed, by.
We're not really waiving it, you check the buyer is responsible.
Oh, yeah, well, so, okay, so great question. So, and it depends on the city of LA, it depends on which one you're talking about. Because they're supposed to get the upfront inspection, and then there's those other ones. So, by the way.
9A report.
Right, the purchase contract actually says, when you get to paragraph 10, it says, it doesn't say who's gonna pay for any work. Okay, and also there's an interesting piece of language in there that says, as required as a condition to close escrow. Okay, so we've literally closed escrows with none of the above done. But I just saw 2 of them this last week, which, by the way, don't do it that way, okay? But, so the question is, because I was asked this question a couple of weeks ago by an agent, well, can't the parties just waive it? And I said, well, first of all, you have to say what it is. So for example, in a contract, you can't waive a TDS if a TDS is required. It's not waivable. Paragraph 11 of the Civil Code says that. NHD is not waivable. If it's subject to the fire hardening requirements, that is not waivable. That's the statute. That's not your broker saying that. That's actually not even the contract saying that, although it says it in the contract. It's the state of California saying that. Does that make sense? So what I'm trying to ascertain in conjunction with Jeff Kahn, our legal, is I want to give you all best practices, so that we don't have to guess on some of these things and put people in harm's way. Okay, so Jeff was on vacation last week. I sent him the addendum and said, hey, Jeff, can we talk about this when we get back? So that we're gonna adjust that 575, that's gonna be gone. And there's some other things that we'll adjust, and I'll have specific step-by-steps for each and every agent as it comes to certain scenarios. And then if we're not sure, because I'll be the first one, if I'm not crystal 100% clear, and even if I am, I still double check myself. Here's the answer, but let me double check, right? So I'm going to work in conjunction with Jeff Kahn, because the culture I came out with, a smart broker, a smart real estate company is going to operate under the guidance of wise legal counsel. Does that make sense? So any document we have or don't have is going to be predicated on ultimately not even what I think, but what a wise real estate attorney thinks. Okay, because last I checked, my 50-question extra test with a C and open book does not go to state bar and all that. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, Christine, anything else from you?
No, I'm good. I want to say that we talked about that yesterday. I wish the camera would go the other way because I cannot see you. We can only see, there you are, hi. And anything that you're showing, we're just looking at, a couple people in the door. So I hope maybe the office can do something with changing the camera to the other wall or something.
Yeah, so Christine, should we tell them what we rolled out on command?
Yes.
Okay.
I did another one, by the way, Kris, and it got approved yesterday.
Okay, so as part of my investigation, one of the things that I recognized was that, so you know when you took a listing, and you may or may not know this depending on how you interacted with command, okay? But when you took a listing, right, your listing would go into the consultation part of command. Because there's three parts, there's the consult, there's the contract, meaning the buyer seller, and it was closing. We had, when the broker rep thing came along, we did not have a placeholder like we have for a listing. It wasn't there. The only place you had the documents were in that long line of contract. Okay, so what I did, and I did it wrong the first time, I had a couple of agents take a peek at it for me, and Christine and Jasmine were two of them. And Christine you run all your own transactions, is that right?
I do in command, except this last one I didn't, but if I do use a TC, I use everything, but I don't allow them access to my command because I want to upload it myself and follow the transaction, because that is my checklist. I don't
Okay.
haven't used the checklist in the past. I use the transaction
Right.
page to upload.
Yeah, okay, so what we now have is a console, just like you have for a listing. As silly as it sounds, so that now when you get a PSRA, property showing a representation agreement, or a BRBC, a broker representation buyer compensation agreement, you'll have the agency, the BRBC, the BCA, so on and so forth. So it's all under one thing now. So it's not buried in the contract. Okay, so if you run any of your own stuff, or you're working with your TC, because now I've got to work with the TCs that are, I don't know how many TCs we have, but a lot, so that they know that change has been made. So Christine, thank you for helping me with that, because I put it in the wrong place in the first go around, and she helped me do that. So thank you. Okay, what other questions does anyone have on anything?
Who's gonna win the election?
I'm done. I ain't talking about that.
Kris, it's Susie.
Here's what I will say though, whether you like this part or not, the DOJ doesn't like us. That's all I'll say. Okay, yes, Susie, hi.
How are you? I'd love to meet your wife. We can't see her. Is she there?
Can you come out? I promise you can sign autographs.
Oh, gosh, where do I
Can you go
go?
fashion show?
Let's go stand by.
Right next to you.
I think in the middle,
In the middle.
yeah.
There she is.
Wow.
Now you're a superstar.
We get,
All right, Susie, yes, go.
you know what? You're so lucky because you get the best compliments from your husband. Congratulations. That's amazing. He speaks so highly of you. You know, I just have a buyer that is interested into a property that is a probate listing with a conservatorship, whatever it's called, conservatorship.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works, is if we need to do extra paperwork on that. I mean, to submit the offer, it needs court confirmation. I mean, it's just a little complicated. Do you know what? Can you give it?
So Susie, are you representing the buyer on this?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, there are in CAR, and so when I'm done here, I'll give you a quick call.
Thank you.
And or send me a text to remind me to call you, and I'll walk you through that. So yes, there are some very specific things that you need to do, so that your buyer has the proper expectations based on what is actually happening in the probate. The one key thing that I will say is this, the knowledge and expertise of the listing agent as it relates to probate is really key, because if it's an agent who doesn't actually know what they're doing, it can be very, very difficult, because sometimes they'll say, oh, it doesn't require approval, and it does, and vice versa. So make sure you're in a high level of communication with the listing agent to really vet out what the process is, see where they're at in the process, so that your client doesn't get into contract and then get super frustrated with you, even though it's not your fault, but it is your problem when it gets to that point.
You know, it's so interesting, but when you say about close contact with a listing agent, I texted her 3 times and I called her 3 days in a row. She didn't respond. Now, after the third day, she calls me back. She's saying the offers were due yesterday, but you can still squeeze it in. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what an agent. And then she gave me a little blurb about what it is, even though it says on the MLS, it is a standard probate listing. So I don't know why it needs court confirmation. So I'm not sure how that works.
Well, yeah, I'll go over that with you specifically, Susie.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, great. What else? Anything? Mike, Sherry, Ann, Monique. Others.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Aaron.
Hey, hey, so all your meetings, is there somewhere specifically I can go to review them? Like, I know they're sending an email afterwards with each individual meeting, but can we get like a list of them? Because I don't have all those emails, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. There's a YouTube channel.
I emailed Brenda and I asked the link for the YouTube channel and she gave it to me, so we can do that.
Yeah, they can give you the YouTube channel. I don't even know what it is. They're
Oh, I
all-
thought they said you weren't doing a specific YouTube channel last
Well,
time I asked her.
well, so yes, I am, but so I made it a little probably confusing for staff. So what I did, I'm kind of shy, so I didn't want to, I didn't want to let the world to see. I know I wanted whatever content I was going to bring was going to be for y'all, okay, not for some eavesdroppers that want to listen in. I might change that in the future. So all the videos are non-published, which means if you have the link or you're on the channel, you can see the videos.
Do you have the channel? You don't have the channel.
I should know it. What's my channel? You've been on the channel? You should check the channel out.
I'm on the chat.
It's your specific channel, not a.
It's on my, your forward. But Aaron, I will get that. I will get that. Make sure that everyone has that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the other thing I want to let everyone know is that we're working hard on, and it's simple but not easy, is we're trying to orchestrate timing. So when we calendar events or trainings or whatever the heck it is you want to call them, that we're able to notify you well in advance so you can put them on your planner. Okay, and so when I say simple but not easy, I say that for a couple of reasons. We're trying to coordinate that with the other two market centers that I work with. Okay, so part of my goal in being down here in Calabasas and Studio City and West Side is to first and foremost look at the training that's being provided currently, as well as boot camp and things like that, so that we're not. So for example, and I think I shared this maybe with you, Christine. So like my first few weeks, I was just going. I just wanted to get some content because we were in the middle of a big change. Unbeknownst to me, I was scheduling, maybe it was you, Chairman, I was telling this to. I was scheduling my Thursday class during West Side was doing Bold. And I didn't realize I was conflicting with Bold, for example, right? So we're trying to coordinate that. We're trying to get at least a couple of weeks ahead of the game. In my perfect world, we would get the month of October pre-booked before we get to the month of October. So that's the goal, and that is what we're working on. So Aaron, thank you for bringing that up. And then with that said too, I know that everyone is at a different place in business and life and everything else. And I was just talking to Louisa, our productivity coach and assistant team leader today, about what the needs are for the group of agents that she works with largely in her productivity coach. But the same thing would be true of agents that are selling lots of real estate, because the needs in that realm are different than, generally speaking, a new agent. I mean, fundamentally the need's the same, but there's some nuances, right? So the goal would be for me to bring for the market centers to be able to utilize me as a resource, to not tell you, hey, here's what I'm going to train you on, but have you have some input on, hey, we'd like to see this, that, or the other. But fundamentally, we will be doing recurrent residential purchase agreement training, because that's so critically important. Because if we can create the absolute best agents, I believe that will give you more confidence to prospect, set appointments, have more powerful appointments, get more contract signs at higher commission rates. Right, Esperanza? Okay, great. So Aaron, thank you for that. Okay, who else? Questions? Anything?
Hey, Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, kind of along the line what Aaron had said, and I know I bring up past thing just because I like that format, so I just was suggestion to you about just a past thing that we had with our other brokers. We had twice a month a broker call, and he would publish ahead of time what forms he was going to do, and then he took submittals. Like I know I had suggested a couple things, Jasmine, like, hey, we're finding this, can you do work on this form? And so that was something that we could count on. That was going to be twice a month, and I would schedule myself, whatever. And I don't know if that works in for you, but
Yeah.
that was something. Yeah, we did RPA and we did, you know, the RLA, but there was also different forms, and we would submit and say, hey, I want this one, and he would do it. And so
Okay.
that was, I always felt that was super helpful to stay
Okay,
current.
cool. So when were those twice a month you said, and what days and times were those done?
Gosh, I think they were, I don't remember, Jasmine. Do you remember, Jasmine? Is Jasmine still on? I think it was like 4 o'clock on Wednesdays or something. I don't remember. Something every other Wednesday. It was something.
Yes.
Or whatever it was. It was a little bit later in the afternoon because there's a lot of agents that still have another job or that they're working. So if it was something like that, they could like had it on their calendar, and it was not in the office. It was all on Zoom.
Yeah. Okay.
Suggestion, whatever.
So, no, I appreciate that. So if you were to say right now, what would be one form? Or the next form, so if you were filling out the, hey, here's what I'd love to see on the next thingamajig like that, what would be the form or the topic that you would want that to be around?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, RPA could do in my sleep. So to me, that one is I know that so well. So
In your
I guess
sleep?
in my sleep, I don't
Okay.
sleep very much. But
Paragraph
well,
8A sub 3.
let me see.
I'm just
I
kidding.
have it. What do you want to know?
No,
Sub C? Sub C is investigation of property.
there you go.
Anyway, so something like that. I don't know. I know we're doing that, but I just like to look at each form and delve into it. And then especially like something like Susie just brought up, you know, sometimes there's a probate form. We hardly ever do that, but it's something like, I would like to learn it.
Okay, great.
So,
Okay, perfect.
thank
So you don't have one at the top of your mind right this minute, though.
no, I'm not specific. No, I just like throwing it out there since we're brainstorming about our future office goals.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, great. Who else? Anything?
I found your YouTube channel. It's called Yo Forward Broker.
Oh, there you go. That's my email. There you go. There you go. Okay.
In one word.
Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, epiphanies? Anything?
Kris, I know you've discussed about the listing appointments and the packet we need to do. If we can just do like a one course again on just prepare a perfect listing packet.
Okay.
List appointment,
You talking about pre-listing?
pre-listing or even at the appointment, what we take with us.
Okay, so what I will do, so one of my plans for October is to do buyer, so aside from forms and disclosures and all those fun things, is to do the 7 steps on the buyer side, 7 steps on the seller side, which would include the questionnaires and the packages. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That's amazing. It's always good to re-review.
Okay, great. All right, who else? Anything? Jimmy Stewart, do you have anything for us this morning? That's the name, his real name, Jimmy Stewart.
No, I'm just listening.
All right,
I'm fine. Thank you.
Roxanne, good to see you this morning. All right, anything else? All right.
Good to see you too.
All right, thank you. If y'all need anything, go to my YouTube channel. Call me, text me, email me.